Hey guys, today I'm here to talk a little bit more about the Cold War, and we have been talking about proxy wars. So far we've talked about Korea and Vietnam, but today we're going to start talking about Afghanistan, and this is going to lead into the whole week where we're going to go from early 1953 Cold War stuff to like where are we at today? Why are we still there? How did this all come to be? But before you can really look at this modern war in Afghanistan, we have to understand the background. I have this information here on my cool new whiteboard, but there's also a PowerPoint linked on the assignment that you can go to, and you see that you can look at this exact same information as well as some other stuff. So before I get going, I want to talk a little bit about that first video that you watched about the location of Afghanistan, and I just cannot emphasize enough for you guys how Afghanistan is the gateway to the Middle East, is what it's called. So you have to go through Afghanistan if you want to go from the Middle East to, say, China. This was part of the Silk Road and trade. There's also tons of immigration through there. You have to go through Afghanistan if you want to go from India to Russia or from Russia to India. It's right in the middle of everything, and that's what makes it so unique in its history and its culture. It's really just this big mixing pot throughout history, and everyone's really kind of fought for control over the area and things like that. So moving on to this, what we're going to look at is what was going on in 1953 to 1989. Again, those are like generally the years of the Cold War. Afghanistan was used as another proxy war. So in 1953, Afghanistan is looking at the world post-World War II saying, where do I fit in? And it was a good idea for everyone at that point to make allies. So the Soviet Union being just above Afghanistan, the government said, hey, we probably should be allies with the Soviet Union. So they reached out to the Soviet Union, and the benefit that the Soviet Union could have was they could influence communism in another country, as well as, have influence in the government in that country and the resources and the trade and things like that. So when they reached out and said, hey, we would like to be allies with you, Soviet Union, we would like your help changing our country to making it be the way we want to be, the Soviet Union was very happy to participate, to help out. So what the Afghan government really wanted in this post-World War II era is they wanted what was called westernization. So westernization would have been education for all women. It would have been dressing more like people in the United States and in the Soviet Union and Europe. It would have been listening to pop music. It would have been listening to the Beatles. Westernization is just advancing in technology. They also wanted secularization. So to be secular means to be split from religion. So they wanted a society that was not completely based around Islam. They wanted a government that was separate, state from church, separate. And on top of that, they also wanted communism as their government style. So these were the three main goals of the Afghan government, with the help of the Soviet Union. In order to do that, the Soviet Union gave them $1.2 billion. They also trained their military. They helped them mine oils and minerals within Afghanistan, and they built hospitals, roads, schools. They drilled wells to make sure people had water. That all sounds great, right? Besides the whole communism bit. So that's what the Afghan government of 1953, particularly 1972 to 1989, that was their main focus. But do you think everyone really wanted all of this within that country? Not really. When you live a certain way for so long and, your whole world is tied in with your religion and things, when someone just tries to rip that away and change everything so much so fast, you are going to have people who are going to rise up against that. So there was a whole group that didn't want westernization. They wanted to stay how they were. They didn't want secularization. They didn't want women to have as much education and be uncovered because they felt like it was against what they believed in. So on this side, we have a group that was called the Mujahideen. And conversely to the Soviet Union, they were supported by the United States, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and China. And so we weren't there like boots on the ground, but we were down here. We were offering them between $20 and $40 billion in aid. We also trained their military. We sent over weapons for them. And we also helped build refugee camps in Pakistan so that people didn't have to live under a government that they didn't want to. So while these guys later went into full-blown fighting, Afghans who didn't align with this viewpoint could move over the border to Pakistan and live in a safe space as refugees until hopefully the conflict settles down. And in their theory, hopefully the Mujahideen would have won. And the goal was that they would have an independent Islamic State with no influence from the Soviet Union or anywhere else. And they could create a government based around Islam, and really kind of do with their country as they wanted. So there was a war within Afghanistan. It was known as the Soviet-Afghan War, and it was between this Afghan government, supported by the Soviet Union, between the Mujahideen, who was mainly supported by the United States. So again, this takes us back to being another proxy war of the Cold War. We really wanted to stop that spread of communism and promote democracy, even if that meant people choosing an Islamic government. So this is kind of the background there. Another little part that I think we should add is that in 1979, the Soviet Union full-on invaded Afghanistan to fight against the Mujahideen. They showed up with tanks, and a lot of Afghanis felt really badly about this. It has said that between... Gotta find my numbers here. My notes here suggest that the Afghan people said that between 500,000 and 2 million people were killed, injured, or raped during this time that the Soviet Union had come in. So this group, the Mujahideen, trained by the U.S. with our weapons, was fighting back pretty full force against the Soviet Union being there. One group, believes they're helping out and giving people what they want that way, and the other one believes the same on this side. So that conflict was going on there, and we're pouring money in to kind of fight against communism in that area as another proxy war. Now, as we move forward, we're going to see that following all of this, the Mujahideen kind of comes out on top once the Soviet Union goes back, goes back into the Soviet Union, and that leaves Afghanistan kind of as like, what are we going to do? We need to build this Islamic government. And in the meantime, thinking again about a country who is sick of being invaded, and it didn't go so well last time they asked for help and tried to make allies, are now given collectively probably about $30 billion, as well as a ton of military training and weapons. And we're going to see that in the 90s, that turns into something not so great. So they were really sick of our influence or anyone's influence. And after we helped them achieve what they wanted with the Mujahideen, then they said, okay, please let us be independent. But we were already so invested and wanted to participate there. And that's where we really start to see things turn sour for the United States and Afghanistan at that point. They're trying to push us out, and would like a little more influence and control than just being pushed out. So we're going to see in the next video about that and how the creation of the Taliban really came from this group in the Soviet-Afghan War.